What's up, everybody, and welcome back to What's the Word? Today is Monday, August 24th, 2020, and the word comes from Proverbs 23, verse 7, which reads, "For as he thinks in his heart, so he is." And from that, I want to say that the things that you care about, the things that are constantly on your mind, are the actions you end up making and the things that tend to pop up in your life. So focus on positive things, and positive things will happen in your life. Focus on the negative things, and things will start turning negative. So Proverbs 23 verse 7, "For as he thinks in his heart, so he is." The first thing I want to take a look at is UFC 252. The pay-per-view took place on Saturday, August the 15th, and I know I'm late, but bear with me. The main event featured a light heavyweight championship fight, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier Part 3. And for those of you who watch UFC, you know that Stipe retained his belt and Daniel Cormier retired. But the fight itself was pretty interesting. The thing that got me the most was the ref caught DC's eye poke of Stipe in the first round, but completely missed when Stipe eye poked DC and tore his cornea. The injury left DC blind in his left eye for the remainder of the fight, so about 3 rounds he was fighting without vision in his left eye. And for all that to happen, DC still managed to put up a pretty good fight. It went the distance, unanimous decision in Stipe's favor. You can see the stats here. Nothing really to contest about it. It was a good fight. Hate to see that Daniel Cormier goes out that way. Obviously, when you retire, you want to retire as the champion, but it just didn't work out that way. He's still one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time, former Olympic medalist, and just wish him the best. He'll still be commentating in the UFC, just probably won't see him in the octagon anymore. As for the co-main event, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera, what a disappointment. Vera won by first round TKO after Sean O'Malley supposedly injured his foot. He was even stretchered out of the arena, but just a few days later, he posted on his social media a video of him dancing around. So you just gotta wonder, what's going on with this guy? That's just not how you want to go out. To give him some credit, it's the same ankle that he previously had an injury on, which required surgery. And he said that he was complaining about his ankle brace being too tight. And he also mentioned that he rolled his ankle several times, about 7 times during the fight. But I don't know. The x-rays came back negative, and he said he was awaiting the MRI. But he said that about 6 days ago. So I just really don't think... It was just a real disappointment. It just feels like it's all hype around Sean O'Malley after him seeming to be a very interesting fighter, and probably future bantamweight contender, but you won't see that. And in what has seemingly become a tradition, you saw another UFC fighter try to steal the spotlight after the pay-per-view. This time it was Jon Jones tweeting out that he wanted to move up to the heavyweight division. And with DC retiring and losing the fight, you just got to think that Jon was really just trying to say, hey, anything you can do, I can do better. But as Jon Jones looks to compete in the heavyweight division, Dana White is making him vacate his light heavyweight championship. And to me, that in itself is very disappointing. Dana does everything to line up, the 2 title fight for DC. He does everything for Henry Cejudo, just for Cejudo to retire. And, he doesn't do the same thing for Jon Jones, who is arguably the greatest of all time. But We'll eventually see John Jones fight in the heavyweight division, but for now, the light heavyweight championship is vacant, and the UFC announced the title fight to name the new champion. On September 26th, we will see Dominic Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz, Jan Blachowicz, or as John Jones liked to call him, Jan from Poland. But that's pretty much it on the UFC. Next up is some scoreboard watching, and instead of taking you through all the scores from yesterday, I'll just look at one game, and that was the UEFA Champions League Final between Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich. PSG was in their very first Champions League final, and they lost 1-0 to Bayern Munich, who claimed their 6th trophy. And it was a disappointment. Everything's a disappointment to me, I guess. But, PSG, they had plenty of opportunities, which is surprising considering they only possessed the ball 32% of the time. But out of those chances, they had more shots on goal. They just did not convert. No goals from Neymar and no goals from Mbappe. But better luck next time. The coolest thing I did see was from Bayern Munich's David Alaba, and he wore a shirt which on the front said in German, "My strength lies in Jesus," and on the back it said, "Black lives still matter." So at least we got that out of it. Next thing up is the Washington Capitals. They were eliminated by the New York Islanders. This happened back on Thursday. They lost the series 4-1. And once again, another disappointment. I'm actually not going to get too much into the series other than the fact that the Capitals really lack some depth that hopefully they address, even despite being really close to the salary cap. But after their disappointment, the Capitals fired Todd Reirden after just 2 seasons and 2 consecutive first-round exits. There's a lot I can say about that. You went with the less experienced coach, the one that will cost you less money, instead of re-signing Barry Trotz back in 2018 after they won their first Stanley Cup championship then. I don't really know too much about hockey as far as, who's the next up-and-coming coach, but I will give you this. My pick would be Gerard Gallant. He was the head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, who the Capitals played in the Stanley Cup Final in 2018. That was their inaugural season, and they made it all the way to the championship. So it seems like he's a very good coach. They had success the following year, but they had an early playoff exit too. That was in 2019. And this year, they got off to a pretty decent start, but they still ended up firing him back in January just for the team to come back around and claim the top spot in the West. So that's a name to look out for, Gerard Gallant. He was the former head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights. And the last thing from hockey comes from EA Sports, as they announced that NHL 21 will have Alex Ovechkin as the cover athlete. And you can see all the variations of that cover right here. Also, sticking with monumental sports, the Washington Wizards obviously were eliminated from the bubble after their 1-7 venture to Orlando. And I'll admit, I was wrong. On my last podcast, I said that they would go winless. Whoop-de-doo, they got a win. They defeated the Boston Celtics, who pretty much rested all their starters. But what that gained the Wizards was the 9th pick in the NBA draft lottery. They went in with the 9th best odds, and they ended up with the very pick that they had the best odds of getting. So that's how lotteries work most of the time. But I'll look at my prospects for that 9th pick. Some of these guys obviously won't be there, but one of them will. It's a pretty good draft as far as, back end talent. Tommy Shepard, the GM of the Wizards, said that whoever they draft, he hopes that they'll most likely come off the bench. And I'll tend to agree. You have John Wall, Bradley Beal. Rui will probably play the 3. Wow, that was a tongue twister. Davis Bertans, if we can re-sign him, will play the 4. And Thomas Bryant at the 5. So any of these prospects that I mentioned would likely be coming off the bench. But I'll take a look at my number 1 on that wish list, and that would be Onyeka Ngakwu, the 19-year-old power forward / center from USC. He's 6'9", 245, and a 7'1" wingspan. So he's a good shot blocker, a good defender, and he plays above the rim really well. He catches lobs from 3/4 court, and with John Wall on the floor, that would be pretty fun to watch. Next up is Isaac Okoro, the small forward from Auburn. He's 19 years old, 6'6", 225 pounds. The best perimeter defender in the draft, most likely. I doubt he makes it to 9, but if he is, I definitely jump on him. Next up is Tyrese Halliburton. He's a guard from Iowa State, 6'5", 175. So he's a really skinny kid, but he's got some length to him. He's got the length to be a good perimeter defender, and he's got a good combo game. He's more of a point guard, but he has a lights out shot. So that will pair well as a 3-guard lineup with Brad and John, or maybe just somebody to groom behind John, as John is dealing with trying to come back from a series of injuries. Next up would be Devin Vassell, the guard out of Florida State. He's 6'7" and 194. I project him as a shooting guard / small forward. He's 20 years old. He's also a really good defender. I'd put him up there with Isaac Okoro, but he's a better 3-point shooter. So if he's there, you take Vassell. Obviously, the Wizards need defense, and a lot of it. Next up, rounding out my top 5 would be Precious Ochoa from Memphis, the 6'9", 223 power forward. He's 20 years old. Oh, I forgot to mention, Devin Vassell, happy belated birthday. His birthday was yesterday. He's, so happy belated birthday. Same birthday as Kobe. So, maybe he's worth it. But, back to Precious. The 6'9" power forward could be a small ball center. He's got some shot blocking ability as well, on a lesser extent than Ngakwu. He played at Memphis under my fraternity brother Penny Hardaway, so I'll give him that. He stepped up pretty good after James Wiseman went down. James Wiseman, probably a top 3 pick. Precious Ochoa, not having the same level of talent necessarily, but actually being able to produce since he was healthy. But the last bit of news for the Wizards, Tommy Shepard said that Scott Brooks will be returning for the final year of his coaching contract. I saw it coming. I'm pleading for them to really turn things around. Always praise Scott Brooks for his ability to develop talent, obviously with the roster he had in Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, but just didn't end up working out for him there, and so far it has not worked out for him in Washington. One last year to see if he can do anything. Hopefully a healthy roster will see us back in the playoffs. There's been a lot of news out of the NCAA as college students return back to campus and get ready for the semester. That means that we're getting ready for college sports. But on the 12th of August, NCAA President announced that there will be no fall NCAA championships, citing not enough participation for a, quote, legitimate season. But they are considering moving top-tier fall championships to the spring. Obviously, that's just for fall sports. We don't know what will happen with winter sports yet. So nothing as far as news for any type of college basketball just yet. But the president of the NCAA did remind us that the FBS, which is the Football Bowl subdivision, is governed outside of the NCAA as they're governed by the college football playoffs. That's why you see a lot of FBS teams still getting ready to play out their seasons. And as I mentioned, there will be no Big Ten or Pac-12. I mentioned that in the last episode. And this week, the biggest news as far as that comes from the infamous Lane Kiffin, the now head coach of Ole Miss, said that he thinks Pac-12 and Big Ten players should be allowed to transfer within the Power 5, considering all the cancellations. And I probably have to agree. The NCAA did come out and allow a blanket waiver for any student athlete who didn't want to play in the fall or the spring, so that they can keep another year of their eligibility. So whether or not they play this fall or in the spring, they will be eligible for another year of eligibility. Excuse me. But with that being said, if anybody wants to have that option, I think they should be allowed. The ACC season doesn't start until September 12th. The SEC and Big 12 seasons don't start until September the 26th. So there's still time for the NCAA to work that out. And fingers crossed that we do see it happen. Obviously, that would suck for Maryland, as if that were to happen, they could lose some of their scholarship players, some of their better players, to the SEC and ACC for this year. But the student athletes have to have a chance to go out there and put some games on film and hopefully get to the next level, which are their aspirations. So I can't really fault them if they want to continue their season. But the final news that I want to talk about comes out of the NFL and Washington football team. Head coach Ron Rivera was diagnosed with lymph node cancer, so just keep him in your thoughts and prayers and hope for a speedy recovery for Coach Ron Rivera. He did say that he plans to still coach while seeking treatment, but they do have a backup plan in case he is not able to go. Jack Del Rio has some head coaching experience. He's the defensive coordinator for Washington football, and a viable option. So fingers crossed for Ron Rivera and praying a speedy recovery for that. And the last thing before I close out this episode, if you can see the shirt I'm wearing, Dare to Dream by Custom Visions, a black-owned business owned by my prophyte, Keaton Zimmerman. He does flyers, logos, apparel, business cards, and more. You see my logo, that's done by Keaton and his company, Custom Visions. So follow him on IG at Custom Visions. I'll put that there on the screen. Follow Custom Visions for all your custom visions. But thank you all for tuning in to another episode of What's the Word? God bless.